This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
We made this commercial in 1 week. This is Nicole. Hi. Some people call me Shaps. I'm the cinematographer of this commercial, and Lizzie is the director.
Yes, I was.
You actually had a goal to make a spec commercial every month this entire year.
I'm insane.
Yeah.
So she's been doing that, and then I thought, great idea, allow me to help on this one. We made this commercial for a company called Boruta. It's actually an app. It is going to be coming out very soon. It's essentially an app to rent gear from regular homies like you and I. Isn't that a cool concept? I mean, that really is the first step when it comes to making a commercial, is you need an idea, and whether that idea is coming from the product or service that you have to feature, or whether that idea is coming from like just something you've seen.
Yeah, pure inspiration off like Instagram. Mainly that's where I would get mine. I was like, okay, let me look at all of my IG saved, because I have a huge folder that over the years I've just been saving things, found the relevant ones, and then tried to pull concepts from the ones that I like. So essentially I had the 12 mil on a loan from DZO, and I really wanted to make funky stuff with it because it's so wide. There's a lot of commercials coming out now that have a lot of perspective shifts. You are, as the viewer, the object, and so I wanted to kind of recreate that with this. I didn't know exactly what, but Conor pulled the references, and I was like, oh yeah, we should do phone perspective and like have it zooming through and whatever. Yeah, kind of where it was birthed.
Where the concept was born. I would honestly recommend that to be your best way to come up with concepts, is when you see something and it sparks your interest and you feel inspired by it, save it so you can reference it later, or always keep a notes app in your phone so that you're recording these ideas when they come to you.
Other than the Instagram searching, I use FrameSet a lot, and that's basically a platform where if you search anything, specifically phone cool transitions, it's like AI generated, and it'll spit out a ton of commercials, mainly commercials and like music videos that are relevant to your search keywords. And you can search by like color, you can search by time of day that it was taking place, the number of people, if it's an overhead, a wide, like there's so many little nuances you can do on the website.
The concept of using references from FrameSet will bring us into pre-production. So now you have your idea, you have to make the thing. And we had very little time to make the thing, less than a week to plan it before we were shooting. We had to find locations, crew, talent, write the script, shot list, everything. And planning this is arguably the most important part, because that is directly going to correlate to how productive and effective your shoot date is going to be and how great the footage is going to be that you end up capturing. First thing you need to do is write a script. Pretty much a traditional 2-column script for this one. That's usually what I do. It's basically an audio and visual script. There was no voiceover. It's just music and some sound effects, but it still is really helpful to record all of that in great detail, as much detail as possible, including VFX, what the shot's going to look like, what the talent looks like, what the room looks like. So then when you start breaking apart that script into each of their own little sections, you have an exact idea of what it's going to look like. What are you doing?
You enjoying this video? Cool. Couple things I'm gonna ask you to do then. 1, maybe subscribe to my channel. 2, listen to me talk about Squarespace for a minute. Thanks. I used Squarespace to make my website. I legitimately did, even before they paid me to do this ad. The template I chose was clean and stylish, and I literally built it myself. I really struggle with design, but Squarespace made it super easy for me to showcase my portfolio beautifully. The platform is super easy for me to customize, update regularly, and I can get analytics about the purchases made on my digital products through my online store. And I run my own business, so I don't have time to learn a whole new platform. All right, so head over to Squarespace for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, you can use this code right here to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thanks, Squarespace. Now back to the video.
I know that the actual final product is so short, but because it's so short, we wanted to make sure that we had a ton of movement and lots of things going on to keep people's interest. And we all know attention span is decreasing by the second. So stuff as much cool stuff as possible into this video. But in order to do that, you need lots of locations, you need cool transitions, and those transitions have to start and end certain clips. And so like all of those details are really important, and it takes a lot of time.
And a few of those things we did decide to go with to keep that visual interest was we shot everything on a 12mm lens. So that definitely created a unique perspective. And then using the phone as kind of its own character almost.
Because the phone is the character, you always want to have that in the shot, especially because this is an app. You're presented with a challenge, but it's not a physical product that you can show off. It's all digital. So the phone is essentially your product, but with the help of VFX, we're putting things on the screen that's more relevant to the product too, to help sell it. The conversation with VFX also happens during pre-production, because if there are certain shots where you need it locked off and VFX can't VFX everything, you know, without hours and hours of time. And on more complicated shoots, you actually have a VFX supervisor on set watching exactly what you're doing. So we didn't, in our case, have that because it wasn't as crazy VFX stuff, but basically tried to keep motion throughout the whole thing focused on the phone. Wherever the phone was going, that's where we would be looking. Because if it was just static and you just see her pick up the phone, yeah, you have movement within the camera, but there's like two types of movement. The movement that happens in the scene and you as the camera, what are you doing? The traveling almost sells the fact that you are on this journey and you are traveling to places to like get the job done.
In our early years of doing this, I think everyone thinks that like that's something you worry about later. You don't have to think about it ahead of time. But in reality, every single thing has to be planned out. Unfortunately, because we did this in a week, we didn't have time to do that. And that kind of bit us in the butt later on because it ate up a lot of time on set for us to block and figure out those little details.
So it's super important to obviously plan out all of these shots, but also things come up on the day. And sometimes you are faced with issues and problems and you have to problem solve on location. And it can be stressful, especially if you're under time. Sometimes you either have to move on or there are environments you can create on a set to allow people to like give you feedback. So like if I'm stuck on a problem, the only thing that I need to hear are solutions. It's not complaining about the problem. You don't waste time like dwelling on it. It's never emotional. It's never personal. It's just, okay, we have this issue. We don't have a lot of time. What should we do? Let's open the floor. If we ourselves can't figure it out as like key department heads, then we should delegate and say, ask our people, what should we do? Do you have an idea? This is our issue.
You have to operate as such a team on set, which is why it's important to have your own roles and to know what everyone's role entails and how you can delegate and hand off tasks. In our case, when we got to our second location, there was an event being set up in the back of this coffee shop bar. We thought we would have the entire front area to film in and we didn't need to worry about sound and location was really cheap. We actually show up to location 2 early thinking that like everything's hunky-dory and like now we're ahead of time. And everything was all fine. The entire front space has a bunch of food and stuff being set up, so we couldn't film right away. We had to wait until all of that was cleaned up. Then we had to take time for blocking. Point of the story is that we were all solution-oriented. We all came in and went, okay, so this is a situation. How do we ask for what we need and not assume that we can't do this? But at the same time, we realized we may have to pivot our creative a little bit and shoot in a different area to make this work. So you have to be resourceful in finding your locations. 2 of those were booked on Peirce Space if you guys are looking for a resource to be able to book some locations at a fairly affordable rate. Otherwise, you can location scout on your own. And if you're really trying to do this on the cheap, then you could just start knocking on doors and see who would be willing to help you out.
Yeah, ask your friends or like even throughout your creative journey, as you go on this journey and you get invited to these cool events, just take note and like make sure to contact that person, follow up with them and see like, hey, we have a spec project coming up.
I actually used my mom's living room for a corporate video once. So we had a scene, we had to show people in different age groups. So I gave my mom a couple $100 and just shot it in our living room at my mom's house.
That's unresourcefulness.
Let's talk about continuity for a minute because that came up so many times on set. What's the app that you use on your phone?
I use Cadridge. Some people will use Artemis, but it's essentially turns your phone into a camera and you choose your camera body, you choose your lenses that you're using, and like it'll look like relatively exactly like how you're going to shoot it. And so just because we were on the 12mm, you see the whole world. Like it's such a wide lens. So basically, in order to do a previs, which is like a pre-visualization of what the project is actually going to look like at the end, you can just shoot on your phone. You have to buy it. So like if you didn't want to, that's totally fine. As long as you have the blocking recorded, that's even better.
And ideally, you have someone on set that is entirely in charge of continuity, and they'll be taking notes during each take. It would actually be called a take sheet if you did have someone that could do this, even if it was just a PA, and they just go, scene 1, take 1, this was a good take because XYZ. If you know that, and you have your also continuity notes that she picked up the phone with her right hand in this shot, then you know in the next one she was holding it in her right hand. Because once you start trying to piece those different shots together, it won't make sense to the viewer. They'll just know something was off.
And if you don't know, just do both. Yeah, let's shoot all the options if you have time.
If you have
Figure it out.
Exactly. And that's why on those larger sets, even when you only see one person holding the camera, that's why there are so many people, because you take one person's job, and to make sure that it's done perfectly, it gets divided up into all these little subcategories where everyone is in charge of one thing, and they get to only focus on that one thing and do that one thing perfectly. The more that your crew ends up being a skeleton crew, the harder it is sometimes to keep track of all of those little things. So what all of you gearheads are drooling and waiting for, you want to know how we shot it, what we used. So now we're going to tell you what we shot the thing on, because the camera gets all the credit, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
You didn't do anything.
No, the camera. Essentially, we shot this on a Sony FX3. I pretty much shoot all of my spec projects on the FX3 unless I have additional budget to like rent bigger cameras. The form factor of this camera is amazing. I can put it anywhere if it needs to be light enough to pick up, especially that phone shot where like we've basically rigged the phone to the camera. For wireless, we use the Hollyland Pyro S series. This is like their new series that they came out with. It's also the director's monitor we used, which was the Pyro 7. We used the DZO 12mm Vespid Prime, which is great because it basically has like no distortion. Because the 12mm is like so wide, if I put a matte box on my 12mm, you'd actually see the matte box. So in order to like put an ND on or basically any filtration, we use the rear filters, which are really cool. I've never seen a lens company have like their own rear filters.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
That was really neat. I was in a commercial for, what was it, Adobe Rush. They like built their own thing that went over my shoulders, and the camera was out in front of me so that they could see me holding the phone. I couldn't see what I was doing at all, which was really challenging. Anyways, so that was really annoying, heavy, and elaborate, whereas we wrote this in a way that we wouldn't need the talent's hand in there most of the time, so that it could be Nicole just holding it handheld.
And I think one thing to know is like, yes, gear is so cool. Everyone in the comments or where like the YouTube sphere is just like gear.
Yeah.
But like, even if I had more budget, I would put the budget into set design, into like more lighting people. I wouldn't really care to build up my rig, because as like a cinematographer and someone who is shooting, you have to have the responsibility of, let's make this rig as efficient and ergonomically friendly as possible that is perfect for the project. It doesn't matter how cool or big it looks. You should work within the scope of what you're given, and I actually think it was a perfect scope. I don't think I would have asked for anything more, even if I had more budget.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
With lighting, in terms of gear, we tried to T-bar everything, so instead of building like actual frames, we basically just had a stand and like another bar and draped our fabric across that, so it was just like a very easy setup if we needed a negative fill on one side and something to diffuse light on another. Another thing we used was the panel light. Any panel light is awesome. That's what we're literally using to light this. So you have diffusion and your light source and negative wrapped around all in one. So you don't have to have like the fixture, then the diffusion, then negative. We also use the B7Cs, the aperture light bulbs. Those are really cool if you're like controlling a lamp that's in the background instead of having your regular bulb, which can sometimes be too bright for your camera or however you're exposing. You can just dial in your settings for the bulb. So that's pretty cool. Location 2 was fun because essentially from the cinematography side, I still wanted it to feel like daylight. It was thunderstorming. It was like torrential downpour. I felt so bad for the grips that were outside, but they were troopers, garbage bagged up, holding it down outside. We used the 1200D outside to basically splash sunlight into our cafe, and it looked great. I actually really loved that.
Yeah, it did. And then location 3 was convenient because it was already a studio.
Yeah. They already had basically lights and stuff rigged to the ceiling, which was great. And I didn't even realize this, but the cafe had tube lights on the ceiling as well as the studio. And when you did the match cut, it helped. It wasn't as jarring as if there were just like no tube lights in the second location. So that was pretty cool and very random. When we were doing the product shots, we would light for the space, but then if we were going closer into like the phone or the laptop, we would shift some of our keys so that, you know, it would be on the laptop or the phone. But that's pretty much it. It was very chill. At most, we would be using 2 or 3 lights and like 2 main lights and then little accent lights. It wasn't even like a normal 3-point lighting setup usually. So, yeah.
Thank you guys so much for watching this explanation of how we filmed a commercial in a week. If you guys want to watch a more in-depth breakdown of exactly how this was shot with more cinematography tips and an explanation of using the 12mm lens, you can get that linked in the cards in the description, and it will also be linked at the end of this video. And that's Nicole's channel. She's got a ton of other BTS as well. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for being here. Like, subscribe, hit the bell. Bye.